Hi guys, I'm Mundo. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Title of my talk is When the Lights Turn Off, Farewell to Cinema, a eulogy. Let me start this talk by saying that aside from being a soldier of cinema, I'm actually also a dive master. I dive to immerse in new harmonious ecosystems, passporting my mind by visiting some of my favorite places on earth underwater. So a slice of life that is tailored by that moment, curated just for you. At your most vulnerable state as you feel naked and never in control. But, ultimately, the reason why I dive is the vacuum, the silence, the certain suspension of the outside world, and the cancellation of my own wild neurotic thinking. And somehow diving kind of like takes you there. And these are the exact same reasons why I love being in a movie theater. Trust me, this will tie in together. So think of a film, your ultimate favorite film of all time. Star Wars: A New Hope, Avengers: Endgame, The Lighthouse, Saving Private Ryan, Parasite, Titanic, Muro Ami, Shake, Rattle and Roll, Tanging Ina, Bayaning Third World. How many has seen theirs seated in a cinema house? Okay, if you're nodding, good, then you're very, very lucky. When I say cinema, I mean a picture house, right? A movie box, the popcorn factory, an auditorium for viewing films for pleasure. The Cineplex. For the context of this talk, that's what cinema is. In our company, where I'm a producer, Spring Films, creator of small independent films you might have heard of, such as Sigrid Ann Bernardo's Kita Kita, and most recently, Love Diaz's Ang Pupa, we commissioned a national survey to about 1,500 Filipinos on their movie-going habits. Only about 39% watch local films and 45% watch international films in cinema. This is prior to the effects of the pandemic, of course. That is roughly one movie in every 6 months for an average Filipino. So, safely assuming your brother, lola, tita, and any other Pinoy that you know will only watch 2 movies in a year in theaters. 2. Dalawa. Okay? Where in 2019, there were only like 112 locally produced films that were released theatrically in the country. 2020 kind of demolished this number further. Of course, creating an alarming collapse of theater business in the Philippines and across the globe. There was this book published way back in 2001 by esteemed author Paulo Sherche Osai entitled The Death of Cinema. Of course, very kind of like fitting for this talk. But the book claimed that there will be 100 billion hours of moving images that will be made by the year 2025. So to put this in context, it's roughly 11,415,525 years. That's 11,415,525 years. Scorsese says content became a business term for all moving images, right? A cat video, a Super Bowl commercial, a superhero sequel, a series episode in Apple TV, or a Bong Joon-ho film. Or all are now quantified to be the same. Content. So, even though if we claim half of this is in film, how will this billions of hours of footage of content be consumed? Apparently, definitely, and less likely, and you all already know this, all of this will not be consumed in theaters. So entertainment consumption has evolved, and it's in fact evolving so swiftly in front of us, exploding exponentially, especially because of the pandemic last year. Amazon, Netflix, HBO, Hulu, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, yada yada, ruled the space, recording amazing growth. These are new media technologies aiming to mimic our beloved relationship to the silver screen. But are they really? Since handheld devices, laptops, and computers are so solitary, individualistic even, films are made exclusively now for certain demographic. Because there's so much content out there for everyone to choose from, the experience became a freeing democratic process instead of a curatorial one, right? So that's a double-edged sword. Spike Lee and David Lynch are just two of like the premier filmmakers who have said in the past that if you watch their films in smaller screens, then you really haven't seen them. Though Spike Lee, because of the pandemic last year, his latest film screened in Netflix. I actually can confidently equate the love I have for cinema and the whole artistic foundation behind it to the love I have for my husband. And he's literally the love of my life. So do not worry, he kind of knows about this, that he's cinema equated. But this is very personal. And this is why it's scary for me to accept what cinema may look like a few years from now. Let me share with you actually 3 of the personal reasons why it's overwhelmingly upsetting for me to lose cinema as a grand venue or grand avenue of films. First, I remember a Christmas movie of the past MMFF back in 1991. A film by Bert De Leon and Tony Y. Reyes entitled Okay Caferico the Movie. If you're smiling, then you know what it is. It's starring the comedian Vic Soto. And the cinema house was so packed. I have to be pulled in by my parents so I won't be separated from them. This was the time when Philippine cinema houses allowed this, right? People sitting on the aisles, on the stairs, and the stairs were all actually overloaded at that time. So my parents eventually had me sitting on the ledge that separates the bottom from the top section of the cinema house. So I sat there and I get to finally see the picture on screen. And this is my earliest memory of Filipino theaters, right? Of Filipino theater watching. Then the theater suddenly erupted with harmonious laughter. Random strangers laughing as one. And therefore I started laughing too. Cinema for me is my social institution. Going to one is a collective dreaming experience. An illuminated screen standing in the vast darkness is suddenly encapsulating, like as if a spirit is talking to you. While the film, of course, milks our emotional triggers, from groups of diverse individuals gathered together not through faith or political belief, completely anonymous strangers, anonymous viewers who are there for the pure desire to be entertained alone. People whom you've never spoken to somehow suddenly share this strong emotion, right? And affective expressions of laughter, sadness, shame, anger, guilt, fear, and tears. A simultaneous yet personal reaction to an art form by a group. And with this, a social discussion of the experience at the periphery. If the film is controversial, it can be up for dialogue. If it can be an instigator or for social change. If the film is good, then a learning, an appreciation, a spread of information breeds for others to recruit to have the same cinematic experience. Come, watch it in cinema. And that's just one of the magics of cinema. It's a social engine. The second magic of cinema is that it's actually a time machine. Okay, this is not a scientific claim, of course, not unless Elon Musk, Werner Herzog, and Christopher Nolan can concoct, and come up with something soon. No, this is but a figurative one, right? So I'll be referencing Einstein here. So Einstein's theory of special relativity says that time slows down and speeds up depending on how fast you move relative to something else, right? It is as if it's the right movie, screen size, right? So if it's a 30 to 90 feet wide, that is like 10 to 30 feet tall, you should experience this sensation of time travel relative to what you are watching, to what is actually playing in front of you. An envelopment in a synthetic rocket ship that takes you to a new destination every single time. It could be Cries and Whispers of Ingmar Bergman, The Canterbury Tales by Pier Paolo Pasolini, the Children of Men by Alfonso Cuarón, Brillante Mendoza's Kinatay, or Good Time of the Safdie Brothers, or whatever you remember being played for you in the cinema. And you will mesmerically walk as if time has passed or remain still depending on your absorption of the art presented. Well, maybe for the youngsters, this can be easily equated to Netflix and chill, but it's not the same. Why? Because of the focus, the immersion. There's this certain relationship between the screen, what's playing in it, and the person's mind are all focused and forced to coexist in this suspension of time while in that theater, in cinema. Third magic of cinema is that it's therapeutic. I suffer from clinical depression, and this is actually the very first time that I'm talking about it and I'm sharing it to a crowd. So when I found something so neutralizing like diving, I treasure it, right? I say watching films in the cinema house is like diving to me. It's because it gives me that same affirmation that I can shut my mind by going to an enclosed, darkened room, cutting off visually from the surroundings of my day, enveloping me with no judgments as I truthfully expose my mind and myself into the state of spellbound, to eventually, and with no prejudice, travel to the inner workings of another artist's creation playing in front of me. So I'm sharing with you that my first suicidal thought was actually when I was 15 years old, but this was about the same time that I became really, really serious in watching films. And it has become a routine, right? It's a subconscious routine to rid myself of bad thoughts that I didn't know why they were there and why I was feeling them. I would feel overcome by them. I would watch films. Of course, you know, in our society in the Philippines, it's kind of taboo still to talk about mental health, and especially if you're with a religious family, like religious household like mine. So whenever there is that moment that I would feel these feelings, I would watch films. I would watch a lot of films. It's not obvious to any one of my friends or relatives because depression can hit anybody. And I say that again, depression can hit anybody. I would be the last person to come out of the theater of the malls as they would have shut down for the night after I watched like 3 films from early afternoon to the night. And the next day I would do the same if I feel the same way. There's this PhD scholar and a facilitator of a cinema therapy group named Bridget Waltz, and she notes that cinema in therapy allows us to use the effect of the imagery and then the plot and the music in the films on our own psyche for insight, inspiration, emotional release or relief, and natural change. Guys, I'm like the living testament to this. Cinema is the medicative antidote to my own depression, my mind. Of course, this does not apply to everyone, right? And speaking to professionals is still very, very important. I merely share in this stage how the gift of cinema became my own sanctuary of healing, and it still is for me, right? So when I wrote this and it's a eulogy, it's because it's as if it's a partner that's dying or a relative that's dying. So how about the death of this institution, right? To some, an identifying relationship will be extinguished. To others, it's just a closure of their neighborhood cineplex, SM, Ayala Malls. But dying is a transition and a transformation. And because of COVID, we witnessed so much suffering of our species, of our kind. In crisis like this, COVID-19 though, can still be a catalyst for change. The 2020 pandemic will pave way, or have already paved way, to the new way that we're consuming art, consuming and seeing art. And where cinema kind of fit in this next generation of viewing, I guess we will all have yet to find out. A friend of mine once said, after there's death, of course there's that evolution that comes next. So cinema theaters dying has entered into this crossroads, and majority of the cinemas, and this is my own personal opinion, will eventually inevitably close down. They won't even be experienced by our children's children. It'll dwindle down to the way opera houses, theaters, bookstores, music and video stores, and even newspapers did in the last half century. Then cinema will then become like this experiential bourgeoisie social event, only a must go if it's a cultural phenomenon. Then the remaining theaters will be expensive, attracting only those who can afford elites and cinephiles, elevating the whole experience only to those that can actually sustain that kind of extravagance in the future. And the rest will feast with millions of years of produced content online on our phones. Let's sigh collectively. Okay, so imagine, right? You're in your favorite movie theater, your favorite cinema house, and I beg you, just give it a try. Imagine you're in your favorite cinema house and you're taking your seat, probably with a drink in one hand and food on the other. And then you sat down. And then the lights slowly dim, right? And then there's silence. And the picture and the music dawns. Cut. See how it doesn't have the same effect now as you're watching in your computers or in your laptops or in your phones? Cinema watching is an art form all on itself, as it brings a sensation so alien every single time, sending excitements to every fiber of our beings. As the unknown magic unfolds in front of the silver screen, that is the pure power of cinema. As of now, the Philippines is yet to reopen the cinemas due to the community quarantine measures. But once it does, once it opens, please go and try to visit more than, once every 6 months. And like an about to be extinct wildlife, please experience it while it's out there. See a film, expand your horizon, time travel, and heal. I think cinema, it's the closest we get to touching our own consciousness. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks for the time. Bye.